Alrighty. We are team two here to discuss the difference between total slack and free slack. My name is Claireese.
I'm Izaak.
And I'm Aaron.
All right. So we all just did some research and of course came up with the two definitions that we found on the websites referenced below. Total slack is the time of an activity that can be, the time an activity can be delayed without a big impact on the finish date of the project. Free slack is the time an activity can be delayed without an impact on the following activity.
So it's important to remember with these that they can be positive or negative. So as long as you're in the positive, you still have some free play in either one. But as soon as you get into negative, then you're starting to eat into your tasks or the project. So like, for example, with your free slack, if you're on an activity and working on one of the activities or tasks of your project and you start to get into the negative, that means you've gone past and your next task is going to be delayed. However, you can still save your project by making some of that time back in the succeeding tasks until you get back into the positive on your free slack. However, if with your total slack, because that is your total project, as soon as you go into negative, that means that your project is now late. And the bigger that negative number gets, the more late you are for completing that project.
Yeah. What's important to understand is that the difference between total slack and the free slack is going to be useful for a project manager because it tells them exactly where they are on their project. If they've got some space in their free slack, they don't have to sweat it as much until it begins impacting the total slack. If they can make up some time on the free slack, it's not necessarily going to save them on their total slack, but it allows them more time to put towards it.
Agreed. I noticed on one of the websites that we looked at, it talked about how total slack and free slack is written into your schedule. And I know that's something that I didn't think about until I started looking into this unit, is actually trying to keep that in mind when writing the schedule.
Yeah. I know for me, I was thinking task has tasks, so basically all of them bumping right up against each other with no gap in between them.
Right. And it does make sense to have that, to actually look at your schedule to see specific spots where where you can afford time. So where if you don't know where those places are, you can be scrambling to try to figure things out. But if you just have it on the schedule, you can plan for it or use it later.
Yeah.
Let's see. So if we were to define total slack and free slack in our own words differently than what we have here, what would we define them as?
Total slack is scheduled time that you have to work with for your project that is going to keep it from missing the deadline.
Project to ensure schedule time available to work with. Within a project. I'm sorry. To ensure it doesn't affect the timeline.
Yeah, final timeline.
There. I knew there was another word. I always do this wrong. I think that's good. Schedule time available to work within a project to ensure. I knew that was wrong. Ensure the I don't know why I don't just go with my first thought. Okay. Anything we want to add to this? Little time to work within the project to ensure it doesn't affect long-term. Right. Good. Free Slack.
You could use the same definition, but to say within a task instead of within a project.
Right.
And change it to doesn't affect the next task. Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was the verbiage?
I was going to say, change that last project you have.
Mhm.
So change it to schedule time available to work within a task.
Yeah.
To ensure it doesn't affect the next task timeline.
There we go. Okay. Anything else we want to add?
I think that covers it.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah, it's actually, when I first started looking at this, I was expecting it to be a little more complicated, I guess, because I wasn't sure what it was going to get at, but really it's a pretty straightforward concept. Basically, your total slack is the total amount of leeway you have in your project, and the free slack is just that little bit you have divided up among all the tasks that you have.
Right.
So it's a fairly straightforward concept, I think.
I think so too. Okay. Well, if no one has anything left to add, I think we're good time-wise.
All right.
Okay. Sounds great.